Hi, fifth graders. In this video, we are going to be looking at how to write a check. We're going to be looking at this second row on our assignment from last week, which says on the date of 2/13/2020, you write a check for Netflix for $15.50 for streaming services. Write a check and add it to your register. The check number is 12. In this video, we won't write the check in our register. We'll just write the check, and we'll look at how to write a register entry in another video. Here's how we would write this check. We'll start out by writing our name and our account number. On real checks that you would write for a real bank, that your name and your account number would be printed on the check already for you. But for Ameritowne Bank, we're going to write it. It's very important you put your account number and that you write neatly, because if you don't, the bank won't know whose bank account to take it out of. They need to be able to read the number. That's how they know which account to take the money out of to pay this bill. If you don't write clearly, the bank can refuse to pay it because they can't tell who to pay it for. And then what happens is you end up stealing whatever you paid for because you gave this check promising that the bank would give the money, but then you didn't write the check clearly, so the bank didn't actually pay the money you promised you would pay. So make sure you write very neatly and put your check account number on the check. Then we're going to put our check number. That's not our checking account number. This number up here in the corner is just our check number, and that's just a counting number. It tells us which of our checks we've written in what order. So you'll have check number 1, check 2, check 3, etc. This would be the 12th check we had written out of this checkbook. We'll put our date on here, 2/13. They already put the 2000 part of the year. We just put the 20 behind it, and we're done with the top half of our check. Now we're going to move on to who are we writing this check to? Who is it we are promising to pay money to? That goes right here. We're promising to pay Netflix the money. You'll notice on the check it will say pay to the order of. That's directions to the bank. It's you telling the bank, please pay to Netflix this amount of money. When you hand Netflix this check, you're handing them a promise that your bank will give them the money that you write on this check out of your checking account. So we got to be very careful how much money we write on the check, because we're promising that our bank will pay that much money to Netflix. So I'm going to write $15.50. And this would be fine if I was in math class. In fact, it would be beautiful because I have my $15, my decimal point, I have my 50 cents or my 50 hundredths. But on a check, we have to be extra careful because the check is promising that the bank will pay whatever amount of money is written on this check. So here's the problem. If I write my $15.50 just like this, someone later on, after I've signed it and given it to them, could be sneaky and do this. Whoa, do you see how easy it was for them to fit an extra 1 in front of the 15? They turned my decimal point into a comma and added a 0. So now they've changed my check, my promise. So when the bank gets it, the bank is going to think that I want the bank to take $115,500 out of my account and give it to Netflix. That's not what I want the bank to do, but because I left a little bit of extra room, it lets someone sneak in there and add some extra numbers that I didn't want to have on there. So let's not do that, and let's try it this way. Instead, I'm going to write my 15 right up against the dollar sign so I don't leave any gap. You see that? Now it's right against the dollar sign. There's no gap. It wouldn't be very easy for someone to sneak an extra number in. It would definitely look a little more suspicious if they tried to sneak it in there. So leaving no gap is a really important habit to get into when you're writing your dollars. Just leave it right up against the edge so there's no gap for someone to write an extra number. Now let's look at our decimal part. This is the 50 cents. Again, in math class, that would be beautiful, but it does allow someone on a check to very easily turn a decimal point into a comma and add an extra 0, and suddenly the bank thinks we want to pay Netflix $15,500. We don't want to pay $15,500. We only want to pay $15. So instead of writing our math decimal like that, we're going to do a special money decimal. This is how I make my money decimal. I make my dollars large. I make my decimal number 50 for cents small and up in the air like it is the numerator of a fraction. And I draw a line under it like a fraction bar. That way it's very clear to anyone at the bank that I was done writing my dollars when I wrote the 15 and that I switched to my decimal numbers because I made them smaller and I underlined them. That way no one can just add an extra zero and the bank will think that I'm going to pay $15,500. The bank can really clearly see that I only want to pay $15.50. Great. Now, just to double check, because the bank wants to make sure they only pay the exact amount I want them to pay, I'm also going to write the amount I'm going to pay in words, not just in numbers, in words also, so the bank can check and make sure that the numbers and the words match. So here we go. I'm going to write the word 15, but again, if I write it this way, I have a problem. I left a gap again. If I leave that gap, it means there's space for someone to come in and add a few extra words in front of my 15. So here they wrote $115. And then if they just stuck a little 1 in front, it would look like that's what I wanted to pay. $115 is written in numbers. $115 is written in words. The bank is going to believe that I wanted to pay $115. But I didn't. So to stop anyone from being able to be sneaky like that, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to get rid of all that, and I'm going to write my 15 right against the edge of the check like that. You see how I left no room for anyone to add some extra words in there and change my amount? That's just a way to protect myself, because when I write this check, I am giving a promise to pay whatever is written on this check. I want to make sure that what's written on this check can't be changed later easily so someone can get more money than I wanted them to. So now, after my 15, I'm talking about $15, but dollars is already written on the check, so I don't need to worry about that. And then I'm going to say the decimal point. Like in math, whenever we have a decimal point in a number, we say the word and. So on your check, you'll write the word and, 15 and now my decimal I'm not going to spell out. Because again, I want it to be very clear that my dollars is done and I'm switching to decimals. So I'm going to write it as a fraction, 50 out of 100 cents. If I had no extra cents, it was just $15.00, I would still write a fraction. I'd write 15 and I'd put 00 out of 100. I always put my decimal after my words, even if it's just 0 cents. I put it over 100, so it's very clear to the bank that I was done with my dollars. This is my decimals, and my whole amount is finished. No one can add or subtract from it and change the amount. Now, just to make sure no one can add anything else, I'm going to draw a line through all the rest of the empty space, and my money is done. I'm going to go to the bottom and write what I'm paying Netflix for. I'm paying Netflix for a streaming services bill. So I'll just write that there. Little note for me to remember later on what I was paying for. And now if I look at my check and I like it and I agree that I'm going to pay Netflix $15.50, I am going to make my promise by signing my name to this. It says, yes, I promise that my bank will pay this to you. There we go. I put my signature and my check is done. Now, it might seem like there's a whole lot of parts to writing a check, and there are. You'll get used to it when you've practiced it. But here's a way to make it a little bit easier. I like to think of it in pairs. If you think of doing it 2 things at a time, you can get it done in 4 steps. So here's the steps. First thing you want to think of is you're going to do your heading, which is your name and account number and check number. That's your first step. Second step, do the date and the person you're paying to. Step 2. Step 3, do your money in numbers and in words. Step 4, write what you're paying, why you're paying the check, and put your signature. If you remember to just do pairs of things, you'll just do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and you'll have everything done and you won't forget any part of your check. Just remember to make sure your numbers and your words are always scooted all the way up to the edge so that they can't be adjusted later by someone being sneaky. and you will have a successful check that you can use to promise a business or a person that you will pay, your bank will pay them, and then you can buy things in that way. Enjoy practicing writing your checks. Ameritowne is coming up, and that's super exciting, and there'll be lots of fun things to buy. So practice and make sure that you've got a really good strategy and a good habit of writing really clear checks that are very neat and can't be changed later. Have a good time practicing writing checks, fifth graders. I will see you in our next video when we will learn how to put these checks into our checkbook register. See you next time.